Welcome back to another episode of the Fairway Performance Podcast. Today I'm joined by, this is your third time on the podcast, Michael, from Wicked Smart Golf. So Michael runs, or he's written Wicked Smart Golf, the book, which if you're watching this, you can see a picture behind him there. He's been a two-time guest on the show talking through mental and other parts of the mental golf coaching and mental game or side of the game. And today we're going to dive a little deeper into some more mental golf coaching topics because I feel you're a bit of a leader in this space. And also we've talked to your mentor on the podcast as well, who's obviously coached you and helped you build the system around it. But did you want to say g'day to the audience again and just give us a brief rundown of what's been happening in the last sort of 6 to 12 months since we last spoke?
Yeah, well, thanks again for having me back, Sean. Always appreciate it. Good catching up with you, and glad things are going well for you and your business. And it's gonna be good whenever we finally get to play golf together. So, yeah, I've been a busy last few, I guess 6 to 12 months, however long it is since our last talk. But yeah, definitely done a lot of mental golf coaching, which has been awesome. Was able to be a guest on Mark Immelman's podcast, which was just an amazing opportunity, and glad I kept growing the Instagram and trying out there. I felt like I was striking out, but it has worked well, and was excited to get on his radar and be able to be a guest on his show and just kind of share more about the mental game, and really been just trying to kind of spread that gospel, just because there is so much that we can do besides just changing our swing. And obviously I'm not opposed to taking lessons and working on our game, but at the same time I find that way too many golfers spend a lot of time always on the technical side of things and really just ignoring the course management, which to me is really an extension of the mental game, and just kind of leaving a lot of shots out there. And so it's been really fun just to work with different players of different calibers all over the world, from 20 handicaps all the way down to +3, +4 tournament golfers, and in college and high school, and in different various levels. So it's been a lot of fun, and yeah, hopefully just trying to make people wicked smart and enjoy the game a little bit more.
Yeah, man. And you did say it before we recorded, but we'll go have a game of golf. You'll kick my ass. We'll go to the gym. I'll kick your ass, and we'll be even. So things will be good.
Correct. Correct. If I have enough caffeine, I might be able to hold on for like one session. But yeah, if we go back to back or something, yeah, I'm pretty much done there.
And when we first talked, it was over 12 months ago that we first talked, and we've obviously done a couple of episodes on each other's podcasts since then. So when we first chatted, you were heavily into the writing for other brands and blogging and different websites and stuff. How's your business shifted, and what are you more focused on now in the business?
Yeah, so I've been golf writing since I think my first client. I wrote my first golf book in 2017. It was a real short book, and then started getting golf clients shortly thereafter. And always had a stable of different golf clients, from training aid companies to big brands like Callaway, to different blogs and different YouTube coaches, other podcasters that have blogs. And so, yeah, definitely written a lot of golf content, not to mention my own book, Wicked Smart Golf. And so, like we were talking, I've probably written 2.5 million words about golf, and then another probably close to 2 million words about entrepreneurship and motivation and inspiration. So it's been, it's actually, I just crossed 7 years as an entrepreneur last week. So it was kind of a fun anniversary for me, because I left the corporate world and I had no idea what I was going to do. Left a 6-figure job that was very easy, very sort of a golden handcuff situation. And I just remember telling my boss, hey, I'm going to go out there and try and pursue professional golf, and I'm going to try and build an online business that inspires the world, because my first brand was called Inspire Your Success. And so it's kind of been funny that I did not get the pro golf dream, but I do play in a ton of amateur events. I went to Q school and play in about 60 tournament days still here. And so I've been able to kind of blend my love of golf versus with the business side of it. And that's kind of just eventually shifted over the last few years more into the coaching side of things. My own podcast has done pretty well, and so people have been reaching out wanting some more help on that. And I love writing. I just have definitely done a lot of it, so I really enjoy the podcasting, YouTube, and coaching side of things. And so that's kind of where I'm at right now, and it's just been a really awesome opportunity. Just love helping golfers, because I know that frustration. I know what it's like to really want to play consistently, to just want to have more fun. Like, that's one of the biggest things I hear from people is, I just want to enjoy myself more. I want to have more fun. And I've been there. I've slammed clubs, thrown clubs, broken clubs. I've never walked off a course before. That's like the one thing I can say I've never done. But I've I've definitely mentally quit out there. And I just know that we can put a lot of pressure on ourselves, and we can make the game that's, I would argue, the hardest solo sport out there. And we make it a lot harder on ourselves by having the wrong mindset and by just not really knowing how to use our mind. I've kind of joked with a few different sports performance coaches on my show that we just never really got the instruction manual on how to use this thing between our ears, but we're just expected to like figure it out as we get older. And so I really like just helping people with that, because the better you are on the course, the better you're gonna be off the course, and vice versa. And so just understanding how we can train this thing to be a little bit more friendly to ourselves and our performance just makes life and golf a lot better. So I'm just really grateful to be able to help people understand that and apply it to their game.
Yeah, awesome. And when we were chatting earlier, you mentioned that obviously the mental coaching side of things and the one-to-one coaching with clients is starting to grow in your business, and you're doing a lot more of that now, and it's sort of shifted to that direction. Where do clients, like when someone gets started with you, like where do they find you, and what's the first steps for them, and what sort of intro level stuff do you have, and what tiers to the programs and stuff that you work with?
Yeah, so that's really been the eye-opening thing for me, is just meeting different people at different places in their own golf career. I mean, I was talking with you before we hit record. I have clients all the way from 15 to 65 years old, and I love that people are just wanting to get better, and they're wanting to improve, and they're wanting to do something other than just bang more balls on the range. And Wicked Smart Golf is a big part of the mental game. If you read my book, there's 5 pillars. One of them is the mental game, of course, that's the first pillar. But the second one is practicing more efficiently. The third one is learning how to find peace on the greens with becoming a better putter. The fourth one is becoming a wedge wizard. And the fifth one is just learning how to think your way around the golf course with course management skills. So I really do focus a lot on the mental side of it, but it's not just like, hey, here's the things we can do during the round. It's like, how are we injecting the mental game into our practice? How are we injecting the mental approach into putting specifically? Because that is one of the lowest hanging fruits for most golfers. Same with wedges, short game, and then same with course management, which I kind of said is like an extension of the mental game. So I try to interject it into all areas, because you can have the best mental game in the world, but if you can't hit it anywhere, it really doesn't matter. And so I always like to say that the mental game is kind of a sliding scale. So if you're shooting in the hundreds right now, the mental game is probably only 10% of the battle. But if you get to, the average golfer, 14 handicap, it's probably 50-50. But when you get to like scratch golf or tournament golf, that's when the mental game is like 90% of it, because you already have the skills. It's just making sure we can get those skills out of ourselves under pressure and when it counts most. So people come to me from all different aspects. Some of them, like I said, are going to be 20 handicappers. Maybe they're senior golfers, but they're retired and they want to play better. Other guys are, high school and they're in college and they're really trying to take their tournament game to the next level, and anywhere in between. And so I have an entire program called Wicked Smart Golf Academy, which has it's basically the video version of my book with a lot more in-depth training on it. And I kind of walk you through some of the principles that are in the book, and again, using that 5-pillar approach. And then also we do coaching calls to kind of go through your statistics, to go through the areas that we need to work on the most. We break down rounds too. A lot of times I'll have, a tournament round coming up for some of my players, and we'll kind of go through the course. We'll map out strategies. We'll make sure we have a good practice plan set up for the week. And when we really are just trying to figure out how we can go into the round confident and feeling good. And then also I talk with a lot of players after a bad round. That's a really big time when we can learn a lot about our games. Unfortunately, I've had a few rough tournament rounds myself lately, so I can understand, and I really kind of know what they're going through. But there's a lot we can learn from both the good and the bad rounds. It's just having the perspective to do it. It's having the ability to look at yourself and look at your game objectively and subjectively, because numbers are important. Knowing your stats is key, but you also have to know, like, well, maybe I did hit a bad shot there, but was I mentally ready? Did I sleep enough? Did I hydrate? Like, there's so many different parts of golf, and so I really just try to help players kind of get out of their own way a little bit and meet them where they're at, because I have been at every level. Yeah, I'm a +2 handicap now, but I used to shoot in the 120s in high school, and so I really understand what it takes to get better and better, both physically and mentally. And so really just try and work with where they're at, and then go through those 5 different parts of the game. Hopefully that way, then when they go into tournaments and they go into any sort of pressure situation, maybe it's a club championship, or even if it's just like you're playing your best golf and you realize you might shoot your course record, or you might shoot the best you've ever done, how can we set ourselves up for success? So that's what I really like about it, is just kind of meeting them where they're at, and then giving them a plan to advance, and then hopefully become their own coach. That's really the big thing, is that you want to be able to figure it out yourself, because during the round you can't call me, you can't call your swing coach. You have to be able to adjust, you have to be able to self-assess and then create a plan. And so that's really what I try and do, is empower my players with that.
Yeah, man, I love it. It's a similar approach to the way I work with clients as well. Is like I'd like to say to them, I'm teaching you to fish. Like essentially, I'm not doing the fishing for you. We want to teach you to fish so that you can be self-sufficient at some point in time, whether that's 6 months, 12 months, 18 months down the track. But you shouldn't have to rely on me all the time, because you're not going to be able to just hire me for the rest of your life, essentially. And the same goes for you, I guess. Like they're not going to have you on speed dial all the time to, to cry and to, get hugs and high fives and that sort of thing for good rounds or bad rounds or whatever.
I am a good cheerleader, though. I like to support players.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, it's not great for our businesses because it means there's an end date to all clients and we can't work with them forever. But you're actually having a really positive and a meaningful impact on someone when it's some information they can literally take away as a tool to stick in their tool belt and have that information for the rest of their lives, or be able to implement that thing for the rest of their lives. So I really love that. Now, I want to ask a little more detail about this. So obviously a player comes to you, they've organized a one-to-one call to talk about, their game and how they're going to improve it. What's the sort of steps or the process that you're going through? Like what data are you asking them for? What homework are you giving them? And, where to from there, essentially?
Yeah, so everybody's really in their own starting point. That's kind of the beauty of golf, is that some people have a lot of swing knowledge, some people have zero mental game knowledge, some people have a great practice plan, but they never play. So it's like we have to kind of figure out where we're starting at. So usually some of the first questions I always ask are, what do your stats look like? What's your handicap? Been trending the last few months. Do you track your stats? Again, I can't stress the importance of that enough, because you can think you're playing great, you can think you're a great driver of the ball, but if you track your stats and then all of a sudden you see that that's the worst category of the four, then maybe you're not so good at that part of the game. And I've been guilty of that too. I played in a tournament a couple months ago. I thought my putting was phenomenal, logged my stats, and it was definitely the worst of the four. And I'm like, man, it's just funny. We're not very good self-assessors of our own performance. So I like looking at the data, but then I do like hearing subjective stuff. So I'll just ask them like, hey, where do you want to go? Like, what's your biggest goal? I think that's one of the most important things, is getting clear about where we're at now and where you want to go. So let's say that let's say the average golfer is a 14 handicap. They come to me and they're like, hey, I want to get to a scratch golfer. Okay, that's great. That's 14 shots improvement. Love that. So then we ask, okay, well, if you were a scratch golfer, how would that look? What would you act like on the golf course? How would you warm up? What would you be thinking about during the round? How would you prepare? Do you play in tournaments? And try to really create your future self. So that way we can get clear about where we want to go. We got to have a plan. That's the biggest thing. And again, it's not saying that plan is going to be set in stone and, we're just going to know X, Y, Z, and then we're going to get that result. As you know, you can figure out your driving in this example, and then all of a sudden your putting goes to shit. We got to figure that out again too. So it's at least knowing, hey, here's where we're at, here's where we want to go, and here's the steps we're going to do. And then we're just consistently assessing and figuring out, hey, did this work? Did this not? Every week, every month, every quarter. So that way we're hopefully trending in the right direction. And again, things are going to pop up sometimes, but I really like to have my players go through their mental golf type to understand the low hanging fruit, like we have talked about in other episodes. Understanding how you're hardwired is key. Not all mental golf advice is the right mental golf advice for you. So we got to figure out, your personality type, what's going to set up for success. So getting the goals is clear. Getting the mental golf type is second. And then also the third thing that we've talked about extensively in other episodes was the importance of a good routine. Because at least with a routine, if you stuck consistent to it and you were prepared for the shot mentally, and then you hit a bad shot, that's a mechanical breakdown. Then you can go call your swing coach. Then you can work with them to figure out why you're always slicing it. Because mentally, if you go in there and your target, your club choice, everything for the shot, but then you just don't hit a good shot, and you're doing that consistently, then we're knowing, hey, it's not a mental breakdown, this is a mechanical issue. So then when you go back to the range and then we get a training aid, or we work with a coach, swing coach, to then figure out that side of it. But that's kind of the big three, is our goals, our mental golf type, and then having a good routine for your full shot, for your short game, and for your putting. Because again, each one has different areas where we want to kind of tweak it and make sure it's setting you up for success. But most everyday golfers have no routine, and if they do have a routine, they're making 5 of the same mistakes over and over again, and it makes it's yes, it's a routine, but it's really not helping and doing any of the benefits of a good routine. So, that's why I always say when you're watching golf on TV or live or on YouTube or wherever that is, like, you always want to be making sure that you're watching their routines just as much as anything else, and their ability to manage bad shots. Like, that's a big thing too. I'd say like the fourth part of what we talk about is just expectation management. So many golfers think that they're supposed to, never miss a fairway and then never miss a green and they're always going to hit perfect shots. And I always ask them, like, well, have you, shot, let's say they want to break 80. I'm like, well, and they have done it before. Have you broke 80? Yes. Okay. Well, did you hit bad shots when you broke 80? Yeah, I mean, I didn't hit every shot great. Okay, so we have proof of it. So a lot of times it's just busting down beliefs and managing our expectations, because if you think that you have to go out and hit every shot perfect and then you make triple bogey on the first hole, now your whole round is sabotaged. And so really getting clear about our expectations for professional golf versus where that person is at right now is key. Understanding shot dispersion, understanding that, yeah, we're not going to hit every shot perfect. And I try and provide as much stats, and obviously I talk about them in the book too, just to give people some perspective, because there's a lot of people that think, oh man, if I, hit 10 fairways, that's a good day, or if I have less than 30 putts. And it's like, they're all kind of subjective, and we have to kind of figure out like what is the correct expectations, because if you think you have to play perfect golf to play great golf, you're just setting yourself up for failure.
Yeah, 100%. And like literally as you were talking about that, I was just thinking about a round years ago that I had. It was one of the first rounds I actually shot even par at one of my old courses in Sydney, and I actually only hit 9 greens that day. I hit 9 greens and still shot even par. So getting up and down was really good. I was 6 from 9 up and down. And then on the 9 greens that I did hit, I made 3 birdies, and that just evened it out. So, it was just like literally just 3 bogeys, 3 birdies, and the rest pars, and 9 greens out of the 18. So it doesn't have to
I'll
be
never
perfect,
forget, in
but
high
I just
school,
managed it well.
I hit 2 greens in regulation one time in high school and shot 74. So that was like, I think probably one of those moments where I just remember, I'm like, wow, like we don't need to hit every green. I mean, obviously I want you guys to hit more than 2 greens, but it just got me like really understanding the importance of short game and emotion management and expectations, and I'll just never forget it. I had 2 chip ins that day. I was just getting up and down from everywhere, and it was just wearing down the guy I was playing with. And he was like, how can you slap it around like that and still shoot 74? And so that's kind of when I learned the power of short game and being able to get the ball in the hole. It's not about, they always say no pictures on the scorecard, but it really is true, even though it's a outdated say, or not even outdated, it's an overused saying, if you will. But man, it's true, because there's nothing better than having your B game in terms of ball striking, but still being able to put up a good score.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's what the mentally strong golfer can do, is they can, their expectation management is good enough. They're missing in the right spots. When they're missing in the right spots, they're leaving easier chip shots, and it's not as mentally draining to just chip something just straight up a green with not much break on it to 3-4 feet, and then it's a straight up the hill putt, sort of left for par or whatever it might be. So, and then you're really eliminating the doubles or the triples and bad scores and penalties, and keeping it to pars, birdies, and bogeys, and that's pretty good consistent golf.
We got to reduce those blow up holes. Those kill it.
Yeah, man. I've had a couple here in Bermuda. Don't worry. The
probably
wind.
We'll blame the wind though for a little bit of that.
Man, yeah, playing in the wind when it's like 40 to 60 kilometers an hour that's a new experience. That'll mentally toughen you up pretty quick. Expectation management is definitely required here. Now, you talked about measuring stats and getting stats. What are your favorite tools that you use with clients, and like systems, softwares, inserting in the handles of clubs, like all that type of stuff? What are your favorite things to get stats for clients in terms of software and whatnot?
Yeah, there's so many out there. I think that even if I think outdated stats, like if you just keep fairways, greens, putts, it's better than nothing, but it's still like the most outdated, kind of way to do it, just because we understand strokes gained now. But if you're not tracking anything right now, that would be an easy place to start, because if you feel like you're not tracking anything and then you want to go to like Decade or Arcos, which I can go into, those are great, but they are going to require some more work, and it might take, if something takes a lot more work, people don't tend to do it. So sometimes even just starting, after the round, what was my fairways? Like, did I miss more on the right side or left side? Greens and regulation is pretty much the only traditional stat that typically holds up pretty well. Better players simply hit more greens and regulation. So that's a good one. Scrambling, obviously, is pretty straightforward as well. And then putting, again, not that great because you can have 30 putts, but that's all relative to how far you actually had. So I think at least tracking a few stats. I had Lou Stagner on from Arcos Golf, and he talked about the importance of avoiding penalty shots too. So that could be a good one. So if you want to track like the basics, we could get fairways, we could get greens and reg, we could get scrambling, and then we can make sure to track our penalty shots. So that's like kind of the basic. That's like level 1. Level 2 would then be more of the in-depth stat tracking. So Decade Golf is what I use, but I typically play most of my golf in tournaments. So that is going to be like a little bit harder to track just because you have to know like how far you had in. It's not something you can just insert into a club. Like you have to know on hole 1, I had 142, and then you have to pace off your putts and know you had 15 feet. And so that is a lot of work for some golfers, and it might, again, kind of not motivate them as much to do them consistently if you're not like tracking your stats in the sense of like tracking every single shot throughout the round. Again, if you play in tournaments like myself and you have yardage or you have pin sheets, then you can write it all down. And I really like that approach just because it does give you super in depth. But a good alternative, of course, is Arcos Golf, which is something that you mentioned they screw into the grip of your clubs. And then they are basically tracking your stuff throughout the round. And then they have, I think it's a specific thing you have to have for putting as well. You have to have like a specific grip on there. So again, it's a little bit more work, but it's very much worth it. On there. And then when you have all that data, then again, my students will send that to me, and then we'll just be able to kind of track like, oh man, putting was really tough that day, or we're trending down on putting, or we're trending up in this category. What are we doing different? So I'd say those are probably two of my favorites. Those Decade and Arcos. I think there's another one called Tangent. I haven't actually tried that one out yet. I've heard good things. And then there's a couple other software out there, but I would say those are probably the two that most of my students use, just because Decade 2 is more than just stat tracking. It's obviously a whole way to think about course management and use math to your advantage. So I'm a huge proponent of Decade. I've had Scott on my podcast several times, and they're always the most downloaded episodes because he has such good content. So yeah, I'm a big fan of that, just because it's more than just stat tracking. It's learning how to actually pick the right targets, when to hit driver, when to go for the flag, when not to. But yeah, those are kind of my big ones. And again, it's just doing it consistently. If you just do it sporadically, it's just not going to be a really good picture of your game. And I talked about that on Mark's podcast, is like, you have to be willing to log your bad rounds. A lot of people want to run away from them, but that's usually when you learn the most. And then you can really figure out, hey, this happens time and time again. My bad rounds are when I'm driving it this way, or I'm missing all my putts. Then you can at least know what your weaknesses are, so that when you do have time to practice, you're spending time on those weaknesses and turning them into strengths.
Yeah, 100%. I reckon that's the biggest game changer for so many people, is just having, one, any data, and two is then making it the right data for you and not hiding from the things that you're not so good at. In my world, it's like, we do a mobility assessment and figure out where people are, not so mobile, strong, flexible, whatever it might be. And I'm like, when was the last time you did some hamstring stretches? And they're like, oh, I don't do them because I'm not good at them. And I'm like, well, this is part of the reason why your back is absolutely effed. Like, we've got some problems here. So it's easy to avoid the things we're not good at because nobody likes not being good at something.
Yeah,
cool.
exactly.
So now, we've got someone who's come in, they've got some data, you've been able to, identify some areas where they need to work. And let's just say it's me. Driving has been a real problem in Bermuda because of the wind, hitting it into the wind, and the wind just drifts it in whatever direction the wind is going. And I'm just not hitting fairways, which leads to not hitting greens, and, then obviously chipping and putting is just being leaned on the whole day, and not getting up and down 9 out of 9 times, and 10 out of 10 times when I'm missing greens. What does a plan look like for somebody in this path? Like, how would you split up their practice time in terms of, like 10% putting, 50% this, 50% that? Like, how do you systemize that or break down that process for somebody?
Yeah, well, I think fairways are overrated. So, I mean, don't feel like you have to hit every fairway to play good. Scratch golfers, I think, only average 50% of fairways, and even the pros only average 58%. So, yeah, fairways sound good in
Yeah.
theory, but in general, distance is actually the way to go. Obviously, if you're finding yourself in penalty areas all the time, then that's obviously not good. But in general, distance is way more important than accuracy. We just have so much data now that says otherwise. I know a lot of people try to fight me on that on Instagram, but I'm just going off of like Arcos Golf, which has almost a billion shots of data, and I'm just reading those studies and just kind of presenting that information. So in that example, I would say first and foremost, if you're making the same mistake over and over again, do we have a good routine? Again, if we don't have a consistent routine, we don't know if it's mental or we don't know if it's mechanical or maybe a little bit of both. So if you're hitting a lot of or if you're missing a lot of fairways, first thing would be okay, what's your routine look like? Are you getting clear about your target? Do you have a target? Are you picking the right type of targets for your personality type? So that's actually something that I would probably start with there. And then it's commitment level. Like, are we committed to the shot? Do we actually have the shot? Like, do we have the shot in practice? And then if you have the shot in practice, but then you don't on the course, it's not typically a mechanical breakdown. It's usually more of a mental one. So really just trying to ask questions about like, hey, well, what were you like on that tee box? Did you just miss a 3-footer on the last hole? Were you pissed off? Were you at a red, on the scale of emotional like management where you kind of green, yellow, red? Like if you're red, like there's a great book called Jira Golf, and he talks, actually, I have it right here because I just had to kind of reread some stuff myself. And he talks about how like the highest emotional toll of a golf shot is from missing a short putt. So that's why even on the pro level, like when you see guys miss short putts, the next tee off is usually not very good because they're still very, very mad. And that is the one where it just has the highest spike on your brainwaves. So when you can see the hole and it's right there, you're like, oh my God, it's 3 feet. Like anyone could make that, right? And then you miss it, and then you have to go to the next shot. There's just not a lot of time to process it, and so that can also be a factor. So if you're, having a bad putting day, you might think, oh, my driving's terrible. Well, is that the case, or are you walking from the green to the tee and you're still pissed off and you're not really in a good state? So understanding different things like that is really key, and just understanding like, hey, do you try and play a shot that you're comfortable with? I see a lot of guys try and hit all these cool shots, and they want to hit a stinger and they want to hit a draw, but they always play a fade on the range. So you got to play the shot that you're comfortable with, and you got to be really clear about our targets, and don't try to do something that you can't do in practice 9 out of 10 times. I always say hero golf really, really kind of ruins it. Like when we do get out of position, then we try and hit that shot that you're going to hit 1 out of 20 times. Sure, it looks cool on Instagram and fun with your friends, but it's also not going to be the play that's going to actually help shoot lower scores consistently. So yeah, have some fun out there, of course, but if you're consistently making the same mistakes over and over again, we just have to kind of figure out what that is. And that's, again, you have to know yourself and know how you're feeling in those moments. And so that's why I referenced the putting example, because you can go to the tee box, but if you're still furious in the last hole, you're going to be tense, you're going to be tight, you might not make the right decision. And that's why it's really key to just kind of understanding yourself and just be consistently assessing where you're at mentally in the round. If you're really upset, if you're you need to maybe do some deep breathing, you need to look out in the distance. If you're an extrovert, you need to maybe go down and get internal. If you're an introvert, like you need to figure out your own style out there, so that way we can be as calm as possible, because that's really the goal of the mental game. The mental game is kind of confusing and it's just this broad term, but the whole goal of the mental game is to see how relaxed we can be over the shot, because when we're not stressed out, that's when we're going to be able to perform the shot that we hit on the range more consistently on the course. So we just want to figure out which tool we need to kind of use throughout the round to hopefully manage it. And then if you're are driving it poorly, and again, what is poorly? Like if you're missing a lot of fairways, like I said, only pros hit 6 out of 10. So it's like if you go out there and think you're going to hit 8 out of 10 and it's windy, it's just kind of setting ourselves up for failure. So that's why expectations and stat tracking kind of go hand in hand with that.
Yeah, I love it. It's one of the things I'm taking away from that is also the mental golf thing as well. Like it's really easy for people once they do get into a situation like that, and something I've noticed with myself as well is you start hitting it badly, my confidence level will drop, even though I'm an ENTJ, so that's extroverted.
Yeah, same one. Yeah,
so,
man. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, best buddies here.
We're the rare few, So we gotta. It's nice to talk to another one.
It's I find once you start doing that, it's really easy to go internal because you're like embarrassed about a shot, or you're normally a good golfer, your friends are seeing you play really poorly, Whereas when I play my best, I know I'll stand up there and I'll call the shot. I'll say, watch this one, start on that line, finish here, and then I flush it, and then everything like up, 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 like it's all good from there. Whereas the opposite is true. Like, hit a bad one, you go within yourself, you're not looking outside, talking to other people, being like, outgoing, extroverted type behavior. So I think that has been a real game changer after speaking with you all that time ago, and then also, speaking to the MGT man himself. That's a mental golf type. Yeah, like just learning that's been a huge game changer as well, in terms of just being able to turn around those moments, because you can sort of feel yourself do it for a couple of holes, you realize that you snap yourself back out, and then you can, somewhat, scramble around together. You might have a couple of blow up holes, but it's not as bad as what it, potentially could have been. So when clients start working with you, and so now we've figured out their mental golf type. We've talked about some practice planning and how to like divvy up practice and whatnot. When do you start talking about, in a bit more detail, expectation management based on their handicap, based on Arcos stats or Arcos stats? And can you share some of those stats you commonly talk to clients about, in terms of, 50% of 14 handicappers will hit the green 9 out of 18 times or whatever? Because I know you're really good with those numbers, and you've got them just, there in your head.
Yeah, I guess the 2.5 million words of writing kind of just sticks with me, and sometimes they'll just like fly out of my head during a call and I don't even realize it. But yeah, there's that's huge. That is so big. I reference a lot of the PGA Tour stats too, just because we always think that golfers that we're watching on TV that are making tens of millions of dollars just never hit bad shots, and it's just not the case, right? So like, I always start big picture too, because like, we just get jaded. It's like social media. If you think everybody's fit, everybody's rich, everybody's happy, and you're on social media, you're going to feel, lazy and fat and, miserable. But again, we're looking at the highlight reel. It's the same thing with golf on TV. It's the same thing with live. It's the same thing everywhere. It's like, the best players in the world hit 6 out of 10 greens. They hit 67% of 6 out of 10 fairways, 67% of greens. They only get up and down like 50% of the time. They only get up and down from the bunkers 50% of the time, and they average 29 putts around. So it's like, they're not perfect. Yes, we see that, Rory 375 yards, and we see, Scotty Scheffler hitting 75% of greens. These are outliers, and so it's very important to understand that. And there's a good chance that we're never going to be that individual. I'm not saying you can't shoot for the stars in your own game, but understand that these are the guys that have been doing this for 20 plus years. This is their profession, and they're still hitting bad shots. So yes, that is always the first thing that I talk about. And then we do kind of cater it to where you're at and where you want to get to. So I think the scratch golfer is a really good example, just because so many golfers I interview and talk to my audience, and we'll do like surveys, and scratch golf. Scratch golf is a very common goal. But it's also it's a lofty goal. I love lofty goals. I think that's great. But if you look at the data from the USGA, I think that scratch golf is less than 10% of the golfing population. So it's not a ton of people. So we have to kind of figure out, okay, where am I at now? And then, okay, I want to be a scratch golfer. Great. Well, what does a scratch golfer do? And then I'll pull up that article, and we'll go through, 50% of green, or 50% of fairways. I think it's about 56% of greens. So they're doing, certain things a little bit better, but the biggest thing is usually driving distance and putting. Those are two of like the lowest hanging fruits that pretty much every type of golfer can work on. And I say this from my own experience, because in high school, I was 4 feet 10 inches going in there. I was probably hitting it 170 yards off the tee. And let me just say, golf's very difficult from there. And so that's why I talked about earlier, like driving distance is more important than accuracy. Again, if you're always spraying it all over the course, sure, that's going to come in. But in general, we want to see how far we can hit it, because there's direct correlations to lower handicaps simply hitting it longer. Arcos has a ton of data on that as well. And that's a big thing. So, talking about speed training, talking about, working with you and guys that are, being able to get in the gym, work on flexibility. A lot of people have these misconceptions that speed training is super dangerous and that it's like going to bring all this risk. And from everyone I've interviewed, which has been some wicked smart golfers or wicked smart people that are way smarter than me and, have all these PhDs and motor learning and things like that, they actually find that if you can hit a bucket of range balls, you can speed train. It's just making sure that we're not overdoing it and that we're doing it in a way that, you didn't work all day and sit all day and you just go right out and like you have to warm up, you have to do the things. But I would say that, having my players on some sort of consistency with distance training is key, because again, it's just, you can have the best short game, you can have the best mental game in the world, but if you only average 230 off the tee, it's going to be really tough, because a scratch golfer averages 260 off the tee. So we got to figure out, hey, how can we get to 260? And a lot of times it's actually a lot easier than people think. I find that golfers make two big mistakes, and I made them both in my own game. One of them is slow tempo. A lot of golfers think low and slow on the way back, and so they're like slow, low, 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 and then they like rush the downswing. And if you watch professional golf, they average actually less than 1 second for their golf swing from start to finish. The average amateur golfer is 1.5 to 3.0 seconds. So if you're taking that long and you're just slow, 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 and then you rush the downswing, you're going to feel rushed in transition. And you'll hear that a lot of times, oh, I rushed it. And then what do people do? They slow it down even further because that's what they think. And so I was working with a PGA Tour coach in 2019, right after I went to Q school, Boyd Summerhays, who coaches Tony Finau and a lot of other players. And I said that to him. I was like, man, I feel like I'm just rushing my downswing all the time. And he just nonchalantly, I'll never forget it, just looked at me and goes, well, yeah, your backswing's super slow. And I'm like, what do you mean? Like, I thought low and slow was the way to go. He goes, well, what do you see on the PGA Tour? Are those guys low and slow? Yeah, you have the exceptions. You have the Colin Morikawa, who has a little bit slower backswing, or you have some guys that are a little bit more methodical. But in general, they are wicked fast. Like John Rahm is the epitome of that. Rory is not slow and low and slow. So it's like, how can we get our a little bit faster tempo so that way we can hit it longer? So I've talked to the creator of Tour Tempo, a fantastic app that I just recommend to all my players, because that right there can add distance. So if you add that and then you do some speed training, those two things usually are going to have a massive impact. In fact, I've had one guy who's been working with me, and he started doing those two things. I think he's put on like 30 yards in a matter of 6-8 weeks, and he is hitting it better. His handicap's lower than ever. And you actually sequence your swing better when you swing faster a lot of times. A lot of people think I'm going to spray it all over the course, but that's actually not the case. From everyone I've talked to and in my own game as well, sure, you might occasionally still hit some left and right, but actually it makes it easier to sequence it. So that's one of the first things I'm always looking at with like expectations is, where's our driving at? What can we do there? And again, I'm not a swing coach, I'm not a swing guy, but it's just simply tempo. It's simply how fast do we swing the club? And that's why using a launch monitor, they're a couple $100, but they're a great investment in your game. You can kind of track that. And so I'd say that's the first thing. And then the second thing is usually some course management stuff. So again, are we playing one shot shape all the time? Are we picking the right targets? Are we actually, preparing ourselves for the shot? That's where course management and routine kind of come into play. And then the last part, of course, is putting, which is just such low-hanging fruit. I believe the scratch golfer averages about 31 putts around. The average 10 handicaps close to 36 putts around, and that's low-hanging fruit. So we got to figure out what we can do. Is it an equipment switch? Is it not being a good green reader? Is it not having a good routine? A lot of guys are, they'll tell me, hey, every putt I'm standing over it just saying don't 3-putt it. And it's like, hey, that takes courage to even acknowledge that and share that with me. But yeah, if you're standing over a shot thinking don't hit it left, don't miss this putt short, don't 3-putt it, we gotta reset. We gotta figure out, we gotta get clear about our target and get clear about the objective. So there's a lot of different things. I know it's kind of a long-winded answer, but I just want people to know that yes, expectations is key. Knowing where you want to get to is key, and then knowing those stats, so then we can make a practice plan and a mental plan to hopefully get there. And then again, it's just testing and guessing. Not everything's going to work every time the first time you do it. That's why the mental golf type is so important too, is because you learn how you do best. But then it's still doing it every single round. So a good example, I've had a few really terrible rounds myself lately, and I realized when I look back, I'm like, man, I just wasn't doing all the things I talk about. So it's like, you have to still consciously remember it. It's easy to fall back into bad habits. It's easy to kind of just like, throw everything out the window. But if you're not consistently doing these things every single round, it's not going to show up and you're not going to get the results you want. So yeah, it is monotonous sometimes. It is repetitive, but that's how you're going to get the results. So the last time I played in a tournament, that was all I was focused on, is the like 4 different kind of things throughout the round, and I just wanted to get in the right mental space. So you have to still do it. Learning all this stuff is step 1, but then applying it and doing it consistently is the hard part.
Yeah, you can have Andy Galpin, one of the world's leading. He also works with John Rahm. He's a world leader in like muscle research, muscle biopsies, and this type of thing
Mm.
for different professional athletes and others. And his thing is, you can have the best program written by the best programmer, delivered by the best coach in the world, but if you don't have the one key ingredient of adherence to the program, you won't get any of the results written by that program. So I thought that was really powerful because all these people are, in the world are just going out there and they just want the really short, fast, quick, sexy answer, not willing to put in the
Hmm.
reps to do the things. And they're the ones who complain about the results they didn't get from the process they didn't follow, is generally what I
Yeah.
experience in life, or have seen. Owning a gym for 10 years, I saw lots of that. People wanting to chop and change the program or to tweak it to things that they wanted to do. And it's like, well, it just goes away from what we were trying to intend to get from the program, it no longer serves that purpose.
And it's
Cool, man.
hard,
Well, yeah,
like I will say that, like it is hard. Like you have to stick with it.
oh,
That's why you have to do
100%.
different to get different results. Like you can't just do what everyone else is
Yeah.
doing on the range or not at the gym or wherever. Like we have to do different to get different and acknowledge that it's going to be hard. Like I'm never selling the dream that it's just tomorrow you're going to have it all figured out. Like it is a constant work. It's a constant process, but don't run away from the work. Run towards it because you know that most people are going the other way. So be one of the few that is going in the direction of being able to put in the work consistently time and time again, and you're going to start to see those results. And then people will be like, what have you been doing? Well, exactly what we talked about today, but it is a consistent process. It's not I worked out once and got fit, right? It's not I did one mental coaching session and I had it all figured out. It is consistently doing the work and being okay with it. Like everybody wants everything tomorrow, and it's that Amazon effect, right? So to train your mind, to train your body, it takes repetition. So don't run from it, run through it and learn from all your mistakes so that way you can hopefully become that golfer that you want to be.
Let's just end it there. Just that last quote. I'll definitely turn that one into a reel for sure. Mate, thank you so much for your time. I think there's a lot of information that golfers and particularly my audience can take away from this, and I'll definitely be sure as hell sharing this with all of my individual coaching clients and getting them to have a chat with you if they're in the boat where they need some of this support. Where can others reach out to you or find content from you, buy your book like I did? Where can we do that?
Yeah, appreciate it. Thanks again for having me, man. Always great to catch up. It's been fun to share each other's journey the last few years. So thanks again for having me back. Everything is Wicked Smart Golf, so I'm making it pretty easy for people. Everything, all the handles on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, everything is just at Wicked Smart Golf. The book is Wicked Smart Golf on Audible and Amazon. The Audible version has 3+ hours of bonus content and some extra bonuses that you can download and get signed up with. So that's always there. And then, of course, I have Wicked Smart Golf Academy, and that's kind of an online self-paced thing. And then, of course, working together one-on-one does include all the access to the academy. And you can just shoot me an email, Michael at Wicked Smart Golf, to learn more about coaching.
Awesome, man. Thanks so much. Again, appreciate your time, and thanks for sharing all that knowledge.
Yeah, thanks again for having me, man.